Welcome to the pod today, y'all. This is Josh Potter hanging out. We've known each other for a while. We've done some hunts together. We've done some workouts together. You're kind of my whitetail hunting dude I talk to more than almost my wife during November, just trying to figure out whitetails in December. So we're gonna get into that. How you doing, man?
Good.
The reason why we're doing the pod is the text you sent me.
Yeah.
I gotta grab my phone because I gotta read it. It was so.
I don't know if you need to read it all.
Why is that?
Oh, I don't know. We could talk about it.
I think I want to open the pod with reading it. I thought I screenshot it, but
There might have been a few words in there that were a little harsh.
oh, then here it is. You sent this on, let's see, Tuesday. This Tuesday, so June 25th at 12:03 p.m. is when I opened it. Here it says, long text is the warning.
Warning.
That's good. I'm going to try to be concise because I know you like as few words as possible. Smiley face emoji. That's probably fair.
I've known you for a long time.
Okay. A common theme / excuse from dudes who are out of shape is their kids. I heard it quite a bit on your most recent episode with the panel, but I've been hearing it for years from lots of dudes. Now I want to give context to this real quick. What exactly do you voluntarily do on the side?
Coach high school football and strength and conditioning.
Okay. Say no more. Say less. Now that my kids are all in their 20s, I have some perspective on that. All three of them train their asses off. Even Hannah, who has no immediate reason like the boys do with football. By the way, training was the only shot my boys had. The kids have all told me independently that they saw me doing it and that it made them believe it needed to be done. I was only semi-conscious of that back then. I'm also having lots of player / parent interaction, and a common theme amongst our hardest working players is that their dads are mostly in good shape. Conversely, I'm noticing the opposite amongst our players in the program who struggle. I'm sure this is all shocking to you, haha. My pea brain says that your kids should be a major part of the reason to train, not the excuse not to train. I've always loved your delayed gratification message as well as leveraging hunting to make a better life. Outside of marriage, not much longer gratification cycle than raising kids. Amen to that. Setting your kids up for success through your own training is pretty damn efficient as well. When I left CrossFit Spokane Valley to build my home gym, I did it for convenience, and I thought it would be fun to train with my boys. What I didn't know at the time was that them seeing my old ass out there every day was going to be the glue to make it all stick. I got lucky in some regards. I wish I'd been more intentional. Next time you get a chance to deliver the gospel to these young dudes and they use their kids as an excuse, share some old man perspective. I'm glad it turned out for me and mine, but I would have been pissed at myself if I had learned it too late. Last week I heard a pastor say, a good father's ceiling is his son's floor. Mic drop. And I told my son literally this week, I'm like, Tristan, I'm the only guy on this planet that wants you to be better than me. Every other guy you're ever going to meet is not going to be happy when you're better than them at anything.
Except maybe your closest friends.
Yeah, true friends. So with that being said, I wanted to dive in on this pod today, and that's kind of the topic I wanted to cover because we all do make a lot of excuses. But first, let's get a quick introduction on you, Josh. I've known you for a long time. I think you're a hell of a hunter, hell of a dad, hell of a husband, also a financial guru. Give us a background on you.
I think I was just born wanting to be outside. I hate being inside, and the most entertaining thing for me being outside is catching things and fish and less killing now than when I was younger. But if it walked or flew, I wanted to hunt it. If it could be hunted, and if it swam, I wanted to catch it. It's just the way it was. I don't know exactly where that comes from. I've wondered about that before, but I have one of my three has it too. So he's just same
Which one's
deal.
that?
The older boy, believe it or not. Although I would have to say this, of all the three kids in my house, my killer's my daughter. She's killed more stuff.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
In fairness to the boys, she also had falls were open.
Yeah, that helps.
Football makes life pretty tough as a hunter. But yeah, she's and my wife's a killer too. She hasn't killed for a while, but for a moment, for a few years span there, we were stacking up a lot of whitetail in the Potter household between the kids and my wife.
Yeah.
So
what's your so you have the spread on the kids. How old's Wyatt now?
20.
Wyatt's 20. Hannah's 24. 4. Keel's
21.
21. Okay.
Yep. Wyatt's our mistake.
Well, not really.
No.
He's
it was
also
a blessing, but it was definitely
carbon copy of you,
in
my opinion.
Yeah, especially genetically.
Yeah, genetically speaking. But so you're, as long as I've known you, adamant bass fisherman, like bass tournaments back in the day, fly fishing.
In recovery.
You fly fishing big time.
Yeah.
Bow hunting.
Yeah.
Rifle hunting.
Bear hunting. All those things. Yeah.
And then
coincidentally enough, I just didn't get much time to elk hunt. Football really ruins that.
That's okay. I think you can pick back up now.
Well, I killed one last year.
That's right.
First one.
In a while, right? Didn't you kill in your younger years?
No.
Oh, you never? That was your first elk ever?
I killed, punched my first elk tag at age 48.
That's freaking awesome. I did not know that.
It was not a hunt to write a story about for sure.
We can skip that part. We got one. But then
giant spike bull.
When we met, you were like, somehow I found out like you were best friends with my high school strength coach.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't, this is funny because you are now a high school strength coach, but your best friend growing up
was your high school
was mine, and he was actually the youngest strength coach ever. I remember when he walked in, he demanded respect only because he looked like cut out of stone Greek god. And I was like, whatever he says I'm doing, if that means I can even look like Chad Bowman,
And 5 years prior to that, you would have never recognized him.
And 5 years after that,
not fat, but
5 years after that, you wouldn't recognize, or they'll say 10. Chad is no longer. We called him Coach God because he looked carved out of stone.
Well, he's still probably the most mentally tough dude that.
Amen.
I mean, because he's not in great shape. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He can just flat go.
And I love him to death. So
Me too.
Shout out to Chad Bowman. If you guys, he's a great whitetail hunter and just a solid dude. And so that was interesting, like finding that connection early on. I'm like, you're best friends with Chad, and then, you weren't a strength coach then.
No, I didn't know.
So how did you get yourself all of a sudden immersed into what? And you're all or none. So I got to warn everybody. Josh is all or none personality. There's only one speed, and it's hammer down.
Gas. Well, actually, you're gonna hate this part. You're probably gonna edit it. I'm about to make you feel super uncomfortable. You had a lot to do with that, actually.
Really?
Yeah, you did. I was a guy who I think I met you in 2009. Coincidentally enough, it was kind of a joke that Chad made. I played a lot of hoops, so that was kind of my background was hoops. It's funny that I'm an offensive line coach now because I never even knew what the position was. But he made a comment. So all I was doing was playing hoops. I didn't
like at the local.
Oh, playing in cash tournaments. Trying to put together like
3-on-3 tourneys and stuff.
Oh no, 5-on-5 tournaments that like guys who are trying to relive their glory days.
Like I've never seen you hoop, man. Like what are you forward? Are you point guard?
I was a really poor ball handling, streaky shooting 2-guard. Yeah. I had a really lame college career.
I love streaky shooter. Dude, I like that. Yeah.
It's just not
hot.
Yeah.
You're hot, and when you're cold, you're cold.
Oh, you don't even want me on your team.
Could you rebound?
Yeah. Well, that was kind of I was
D?
I was
you
gritty.
playing some good
I was
D?
just kind of. Yeah, I should have played football. It was the stupidest thing I ever did.
So you really didn't play any football?
I played very little. I played a year in middle school, broke my ankle with Chad's dad, actually, with Chad there, hanging tree stands one summer. and then missed that year and then played as a freshman. And then I did the classic mistake. Dads, don't do this with your kids. I focused on hoops. All I wanted to do is because I'm all gas, no pedal. I can only focus on one thing at a time. I became obsessed with the game of basketball, and it's all I wanted to do. All day, every week. I didn't want to do anything else.
I did not know this.
Yeah, I was a psycho. Drove my parents crazy. My dad would take us on family vacations in our travel trailer, and I would always make him park somewhere where it was in jogging distance for me to get to a playground to get my shots up. I just dribbling out the window of my mom's car driving down. I mean, dude, it was ridiculous.
Wow.
So that, but all I did was play hoops. I didn't work out. I got into the weight room a little bit when I went off to my short, lame college career. And then just came back and started playing hoops. And Chad said to me one day, I don't know if he said it directly to me, but I took it that way, is that I was skinny fat.
Oh,
I was like, because I'm not fat, but I'm not, I didn't, and so anyway, that was kind of like, I was like, you know what? I don't want to be skinny fat. I need to find something. And then I discovered through another psycho friend of mine, Cody, introduced me to CrossFit. And then I got introduced to you, and I was buying everything you were selling. Delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Go until you puke. All gas, everything. You were killing stuff, chasing everything. And of course, Kenton helped fueled some of that as well. And it was just,
Kenton, underdog, Claremont.
Dude, 2009, we're in the middle of a massive, massive recession. I'm only about 8 or 9 years into my practice. Things are tough.
Wealth management, y'all.
Yeah, and
Post 2000.
I got to. Yeah. You guys had a promo that my friend Mike Chandler got me on. The least likely person to have ever introduced me to a training modem.
Yeah.
No shot on him, but there was a free deal. You guys were doing like a free week. You were still at the old gym on Sprague, the basketball court.
Our first location.
And I came home and I told my wife, I was like, okay, my week's up. I want to spend $118 a month on a gym membership, so to speak. Obviously, we all know it wasn't a gym membership, but that was the beginning of it. And then you watching what you were doing with kids, and then my kids were like, I think at the time my kids were like, 3 or 4, 5, and 7 or something like that.
Yep, that sounds right.
So yeah, it was, and what you guys probably don't know is he's like one of the most gracious, generous people that you'll ever meet. I mean, I had all kinds of crazy ideas. I'm like, Dan, can I bring in these kids and I want to run this deal? And the answer was always yes. Anything that I ever needed from you, that was, looking back at it now, I think that was a pretty heavy, that's not something that you would ask of another small business owner, to give something away. And you always said yes. Hey, I lost my binoculars last week. I'm going back into the church next week. Do you have, yes. The answer, everything I've always asked of you, the answer's always been yes.
Well,
and some of those asks were big, fairly sizable asks.
I don't know, man.
Remember the camp that I ran in your gym for dads and their kids? And,
but see,
and
I
bringing
like
my
that.
kid football teams in after
I
hours,
wanted
and you're
bodies.
staying late. And
I wanted bodies in the gym,
like,
though,
hey,
man.
I know you show up here at 5 and you close at 7. I need you to stay open until 8:30 so we can run 18 12-year-olds through a training site.
Yeah, man, but you just
You
never
always said
know
yes.
what that'll do for somebody.
Oh, well,
and
what it did for me was it exposed me to, how exciting it could be to take a kid that had low self-esteem, a million various deficiencies, right? And watch that kid become a killer, his version of whatever that is at that age.
Yeah.
I think it had a pretty big impact on quite a few young people's lives. I kind of wish I would have stuck with it. I think the father-son deal was a good idea. I just didn't have there's so many things going on.
Yeah, it's tough. And like, I would love to lean into kind of like that thing you wrote, because I was like, God dang it. Like, I know you're not wrong. I know that's hard to hear, but I know somebody listening is that person who's not fully expressing their best version because they're making excuses that actually could be the reason for them to train. They're like, I can't train. I have this job. My kids are in sports. We all have so much going on. Okay.
Yep.
And they're using that thing, but you're damn right, man. Like, this isn't the rule, but you could convince me it is a rule. A fit parent will showcase what hard work looks like. There will be breadcrumbs left behind that a kid could follow that same path to learn that discipline, that structure, that confidence boosting. Like, I am more confident now. We worked out today. I have more energy.
Yeah.
I did something good for me. I got to work out with you. My confidence is already higher today because I did it and got it done.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pause for a second, but I want to hear your dissertation on that.
I've thought about it a little bit since I fired that text off, and I know you've heard me say some outlandish things in the last 15 years, and you love to put a quarter in me, and I love to receive quarters from you. So I thought about it more in reflection of sending you that, and I think you've been talking a lot this year about positivity and all these things. So let's spin it a little bit. So obviously excuses are like butts. Everybody's got one and they all stink, right?
Yeah.
Let's take a different angle from it and kind of go back to that leverage idea that you always talk about. Cause I always thought that was brilliant. Like when you started that whole idea of taking this thing and leveraging it into other parts of your life, I was like, dude, I mean, such a smart approach, right? And it really, it actually had a big impact on the way I thought about things that I was doing because, you know, obviously business wise, you want to get leverage because that's how you maximize profits, right? But in life, I think the deal is that that leverage gives you a handful of things. And rather than talking about the idea of using your kids as an excuse not to train, what about the idea of looking at your kids as an opportunity to leverage something that's going to impact everybody in a positive way? And then I think one of the side benefits of leverage is that what we don't really consider is that it also sort of on its own interweaves a bunch of different stuff and creates a level of accountability. So you think about it like this. So if I look at my kids as an opportunity, so we'll talk about some of the positive things that happened as a result of this. So we have an additional aspect of our life that we're both interested in, right? So we have a common theme, right? So, and I think in, you know, a lot of times with your relationship with your kids, it's grown up kid, right? When you're in the gym together, it's not dad as the authority, kid as the, you know, subordinate. It's just, look, 225 pounds on a bar is 225 pounds.
Yeah.
That 225 pounds doesn't give two craps about who's in charge and who's not in charge.
Right.
It gives you a level of, we can all relate to it, right? Coming out of the hole, heavy, whatever heavy is for you. Sometimes there's not a whole lot of things that our kids that we can relate to with them, but that gave us an additional thing because we all experienced it together. What
is the right age for your, like, I guess go through this, use your kids as example. Let's start with Wyatt and then move up to your oldest boy. But like, or maybe Keel, what
Hannah.
age did Hannah even?
Yeah.
How do you, like, so Tristan.
Yep.
My son Tristan is just turned 8. And I make jokes to my friends that, like, he wants nothing to do with what I do. But that's not true. He sees everything.
No.
He sees me training. He sees me shooting a bow. He knows what I do for work. He understands it all. And he's worked out a few times, but I never make him or ask him. I never ask him to shoot bows. I wait for him to ask for me. But eventually, he's going to something's going to strike a nerve with him, and he's going to be like, I want an advantage at sports.
Yep.
How can I do that? And and I'm waiting for that day.
Yeah.
Is that what you did, essentially?
Yeah, I totally did. Real quick, though, before I forget, because that was a little bit of rambling, then you get tied up. This training with your kids gives you a chance to be deeper in the relationship with those kids.
Right.
That's where the opportunity comes. So I didn't want it to be one of these things where it's like, hey, don't use your kids as an excuse. I'm like, no, let's flip that, because negative reinforcement is not really that powerful.
Certainly
How about
not.
looking at it as an opportunity to have a deeper relationship with your kids through something that, in order to have the best life you can have, you're going to need to do until you're dead. How about that as a SWIP? But going back to the question, I made that joke when I left. You know, I didn't really want to leave Spokane CrossFit. I thought it was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But I knew it wasn't practical and I knew that my kids were going to need to get some exposure to that.
Yep.
So I just built the gym at the house. It was the best money I ever spent, by the way.
Really?
Oh, dude, that stuff gets used. Like, there's not a day that goes by that equipment, there's not a single piece of equipment that I've ever purchased that I regretted. Not
So
one.
return on investment
Not one.
immediately.
And forever.
That's cool.
Like, bumper plates aren't going to wear out.
No.
I mean, I hope they do. I hope
Yeah.
we use those things so much that they bust out in the center.
Yeah.
But so that was awesome. Basically what happened was a lot of the training stuff was driven really by the boys. The least likely, I would have said, of the three was the one that kind of started it. And it started with my son. He decided he wanted to play football. I let the younger one play first. I didn't think the older kid was cut out for it. I didn't know.
That's crazy.
I didn't know
Because the older one's fast as hell.
I didn't know if he ever was going to be cut out for it. His demeanor's totally different. And so the youngest boy was the first one to play, which also kicked off my coaching career. I had no idea what it was going to spark.
Yeah.
It was based on a bet that he made with me, and I was like, yeah, no chance. And then he proved me wrong, and the bet was, if I show you this, can I do this? I was like, yeah, because I knew there was no chance I could lose. And then he comes back 5 minutes with the iPad, and he's like, look, Dad, I found a team right here on the South Hill where we live. That means I can play, right? I was like, oh, shoot. I made the deal.
Yep.
And that's what kicked it off. But the older boy, after he decided he wanted to be a running back, and I was just like, okay, well, here's what you're going to have to do, because you're nowhere good enough now. Like, and I was coaching, and so there was no way I was going to we're not going to hand anything to any of them.
Yeah.
I was like, well, here's what's going to have to happen in order for you to get to a place to earn the right to have that spot. And so we made a deal. I think it was the summer between 7th and 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm like, here's what we'll have to do is you're going to have to train 5 days a week.
Yep.
And we're not training when I'm training, because dads have a tendency to be selfish. That's my time.
Agreed.
Which then later I rethought, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was like, so here's the window of opportunity for you, 6 a.m. And that means that, summer vacation for you is going to be starting every morning at 6 a.m. And I'm not coming to wake you up.
Damn, I love it.
So at 6 a.m., at 6:05, I'm on my way to the office.
Yep.
At 5:58, if I hear rustling upstairs, I'll know that you're getting up, and I'll have a plan, and we'll train. And then, of course, the little brother's like, I'm doing this too. I was like, what do you mean? You guys are going to go work out every morning and I'm not coming?
Did you foresee that? Like, honestly? Or was that like a nice, pleasant surprise?
I mean, it didn't shock me because that kid's a psycho.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, well, of course, I'm not going to say no. Mm-hmm. And so every morning, Monday through Friday, without missing a single session, we were up and training, whether we were at the park, pushing sleds, pulling sleds, doing all,
God, that's awesome, man. What ages were the boys?
So one was on his way into 7th grade and one was on his way into 8th grade.
Dude, you're literally giving me goosebumps here. That was the year in my life where I had a mentor like what you just described. I've said on this pod many times, like, hey, do you want to keep messing around, or do you want me to show you actually how to train and not eat like an asshole? I can literally make you jacked. And I followed his program to a T.
Well, hopefully your guy knew more than I did.
This guy was brilliant.
I didn't. The training was not the highest quality training. I'll be honest with you.
There wasn't the internet then,
yeah,
right?
Well,
like
there was.
This guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
for you had the internet,
Oh,
and for
yeah.
everyone listening now, you got the gosh dang internet. You can like,
Yeah.
there's the information is
Oh, yeah.
overflowing. But the bottom line is like that is such a perfect age to instill this delayed gratification, like we talk about. Where I went into 8th grade, people didn't recognize me.
Yeah.
because I was so like I literally felt like so confident putting on 20, 25 pounds. And it was probably mostly muscle, man. And obviously puberty helps. But
Yeah.
dang, I felt
Well,
like I had an edge.
Yeah, if you T-bone the start of training with the kickoff of testosterone through puberty, it's an amazing thing. I will say the seed was planted earlier than that. I didn't know that, but
Right.
remember when I was, because I thought I was going to be a competitive CrossFitter.
Didn't we all?
Well, yeah, I mean, so, a lot of times when they were little, if I wanted to go get a second training session or whatever the case was, I was like, hey, you're taking these 2 jack wagons with you, right? That's mom. And so I'd bring them out. And of course, no one is allowed to walk into your facility and leave dry. They all have to sweat. Mm-hmm. And so I'd bring those boys and I'd tell them to sit in the corner and be quiet. And the first thing that you would do was you'd walk over and you'd be like, you're going to work out.
Yeah.
And they did it. And then later in life, I asked them about some of that stuff. And I was like, hey, because I had my opinions on how it went. But now that they're in their 20s,
I'd love to hear this. Yeah.
I can ask them, here's how I saw it. Did you see it the same way? And largely it was, but it was interesting to hear I'd say like, because one of the things that they witnessed was like, we weren't working it out at home. They were watching me trying to compete as a grown-up, and everybody in that facility. I mean, you had I don't know what a lot of facilities, I didn't go to a lot of other places. I only visited a couple others.
Yeah.
But your competitive overtone to your facility is what was the magic behind it,
Yeah.
right? Because we were all in there trying to kill each other every day,
Yep.
right? In a good-spirited manner.
Yes.
Sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah.
And so those boys watched their dad with other grown men and some not grown men try to kill each other.
Over points on a whiteboard.
Over points on a whiteboard that no one remembers.
Exactly.
And never will. I don't have any recollection of any of those days from the scores. But they saw that. And so for them, it was like, well, this is what dudes do.
Yeah.
Dudes try to kill each other 4 or 5 days a week.
Yep.
And we don't know any different. And then what they told me later is like, because I asked them, like, was that as impactful on you as I'm perceiving it to have been? And they're like, oh, Dad, we would go home, we would run upstairs, and we would try to recreate some of the crap that you guys were doing when we were supposed to be in
the
bed.
little mezzanine.
Oh yeah, no, in their bedroom, close the door, because
Oh.
it's hey, lights out, let's go to bed, fellas, and they're up there just trying to do whatever it was that they witnessed.
God dang, it's serious then.
And then you were so gracious to when we got into that phase where we were testing out, and I would call you and be like, hey, it's time to test vertical today, and you'd be like, oh yeah, just come out. And then I'd show up and you were hosting a huge night of the games, and I'm like, there's 150 people in the gym. Why are you letting me take up space as a non-contributor to this deal? And they were like, oh, it's over there. Just do your thing. And so we're in there testing verticals while people who are trying to post good scores in an actual open workout and things like that. And
Didn't you have a pretty, not a side tangent, but you
yeah.
had a pretty decent vertical for a middle-aged male. I remember you were over 30, weren't you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's pretty legit. And I also still to this day believe that there is a correlation to your vertical, to your deadlift, to your speed, to basically how much force you can put into the ground.
Yeah, the only pushback I give you, I would say, 90% of the time, I think I was an exception because I was barely above average leaper, definitely below average speed. So
Interesting.
Like I couldn't.
What kind of speed? Like acceleration or just top end speed?
Top end. I didn't have good top end speed.
It is what it is there, but acceleration in those initial, putting force into the ground, getting that, stretch reflex and ground force reactions. I just think relative strength and your power, your elasticity, it all corresponds. I'll tell you one thing though, for youth athletes, I want them introduced to strength training. I want them introduced to sound fundamental technique with a dowel, with an empty bar, just over time, like learning and carving out really good pathways. Guys, it's just like learning to shoot a bow. Like you could teach yourself and then you can get with like a really good coach 5 years later and they could be like, you're fucked. You've taught yourself all these shitty habits. Yeah. I got to undo them all. And same with your kids.
You should see what I have to deal with the high school kids. Yeah, the movement deal. So like the thing I'm fighting all the time with the high school kids is, and I'm sure they're tired of hearing me say this, is like, I don't care how much weight you move. I care how you move it. The joke I always use with them is like, hey, has any of your position coaches ever asked you what your 400-meter backstroke time is? You're like, what? I'm like, yeah, that's because we don't give a crap. It's like, I also don't give a crap that you just move 400 pounds in the least athletic looking way I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know how you didn't kill yourself. I'd rather see you move 225 pounds and look like an athlete than that crap that I just saw right there. But ego, I mean, I get it. I still do it.
So we should probably get into, like, this is the part I really want to pick your brain. Okay, I don't really care how we got to this point, but you are strength and conditioning guy for the football program. Somehow along the way there, you've earned the trust of a successful head coach. Mm-hmm. You have a very good program, and you have influence, and you are now a decision maker. You can talk about how you got to that point, but really, to me, it's like, what are you seeing? What are you observing? What are the best practices to get your kids to trust the strength coach, to do the movement, to trust the process, to train with them? Like, at the end of the day, we want what's best for our kids. We want, how did that happen?
Well, it kind of goes back to like leveraging my kids. Like when I decided that I was going to be the first strength coach that they had, which, by the way, all dads, if you don't think you're coaches, you're just lying to yourself. Your first coaching job may be the only coaching job you ever have, but every dad's a coach.
Yeah.
That's what you are. And being a dad is the most important job that I've ever had or ever will have. And so when I was thinking about, if I'm going to be my kid's strength coach, I better be as good as I possibly can, because I don't want to screw it up.
Yeah.
I don't want to screw it up. And so, I mean, how many texts did you receive from me over the years of, hey, this is what I'm thinking, blah, blah. For every text message that I sent to you, I cyberstalk strength and conditioning. I mean, me, I had zero social media for almost all my life.
Yeah, I think you just got Instagram a year ago, maybe?
Yeah. And Twitter like 3 years prior. And the only reason I got it was because I kept hearing that this is where you can find information on the best strength and conditioning practices for athletes.
Yes.
Because my only exposure to the field really was CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I realized fairly quickly, like, okay, this is great for general purposes and things like that.
Off-season stuff, sure.
But this is not how we're going to train athletes to be as explosive as they possibly can. Because really, in the end of the day, when it comes to football, the only thing that matters is speed.
Yeah, how long is a play? 7 seconds, 11 seconds?
Well, just this is what I always ask our kids. I'm like, whenever we lose, the one thing you'll never hear in the coach's office, the discussion topic of it is like, we probably would have won Friday night. It's just we're so damn fast.
That's not going to happen.
It's never going to happen,
no.
Right? So you can't be too strong. You can't be too fast. And strength, I think, might be a little bit overrated in that regard. But I didn't want to screw up my kids, and I kind of did in some ways. Looking back at it now, they were my original guinea pigs. I think the kids that I'm working with now are getting much better coaching than my originals did. But that's what sent me on the track. And I just, being all pedal, no gas, I was like, because I've always felt like, and our kids have always like, look, if you're going to do something, be as awesome as you possibly can. I'm not saying it's not to be the most awesome. That might not be possible, but if it's worth doing, you should try to be as good as you possibly can.
You should be satisfied with your effort.
Yeah, you should be satisfied with your effort. You should feel like you're making progress. You should be, learning. I mean, you should, I got a really brilliant coach told me, he's passed away now, but he told me, like, if you're doing it right, you should look back at yourself 3 years and be embarrassed. Like, you should cringe when you think about what you were doing 3 years ago, because that's how much progress you should be making. So
that could really go for anything in life, right? Because if you're not getting better, you're not staying the same, you're getting worse.
And this is the this is the whole point. It's like, if no one's going to care about someone else more than you do your own kids and your wife.
Right.
So that drive to be the best strength coach I could be for them was what sent me down the track. Now, I had no idea all of the other little, this is what I was saying before, is the interwovenness and the accountability. Because it's like, you go, okay, well, so I want to get this job. I really want to train high school football players. I don't want to screw up my own kids. They were my first, they were my first test dummies. Somebody's going to look at these guys and be like, hey, you train that kid? I don't know if we want you.
Right.
But you just get excited about it and you learn. And I tell her, I'm still doing stupid stuff with our kids. Not on purpose.
Well,
but I run them through something and I look back and I'm like, okay. And I'll come back to them and I'll say, hey, fellas, look, I told you the wrong thing last week. Now I know that I told you the wrong thing. Let's fix it.
That's cool. How many kids are training with you right now in the summer?
Well, we fire back up on Monday. We'll see. But if there's,
what are you anticipating?
If there's not 75 to 85 Vikings at Army on Monday, Coach Amos would probably be pretty upset.
All right. Ages literally 14 to 18.
So these are incoming freshmen to incoming seniors.
Okay. So you got a lot of clay to mold, and then you got some know-it-alls, and you got in-betweens. Okay.
Oh, and some meatheads.
What's the sessions look like? How do you break up 75 to 80 athletes?
Yeah.
Is it
so we'll go. We've done a few different things, and Coach Amos is super flexible. So, but in full disclosure, I don't write the strength program. So he writes a strength program. If I come back to him and say, hey, Coach, I think we should. He's like you. The answer is always yes, because he assumes that it's been thought through.
Right.
So my major responsibility is actually the movement piece.
The most important piece, honestly. Who gives a crap what you're doing as long as you're doing good movement?
So we'll split it. So we'll go, like I believe Mondays starts with, so the younger guys will,
age is what?
So incoming freshmen. So we separate those
They're
guys.
by themselves.
They're by themselves.
Okay.
Yep. Doing something a little bit different than the older guys are doing.
A little more fundamental focus.
And actually we're stripping it back to where we started in the January for the first couple of weeks too. The guys are going to hate it.
Great.
We already done this,
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You can never be too good.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah. The fundamentals of so it'll be, we'll go young guys, incoming freshmen will be in the weight room to begin with. Older guys will be on the field. I like to do speed. I shy away from saying speed and agility. I like to call it movement.
Okay.
Because
acceleration,
some of them aren't
deceleration,
fast,
change
some
direction.
of them aren't agile.
Yeah.
We're trying to get them that way. And so we'll start with that for the older guys, and then we'll flip it. And so then the older guys will go in and get their lift, and the younger guys will come out and do, the movement stuff. And then.
So are you saying you have incoming freshmen, which is one grade?
Yeah.
And then sophomore through senior is in the other one?
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference in body sizes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And not only like developmental, but like actual numbers in the gym. Do you have capacity to train that many guys at once?
It's challenging. I don't know if we always do the best job, but we have a handful of guys. So this is not me by myself.
Obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, we've got other guys. And, and one of the things about keeping your program consistent is it gives coaches who don't like to spend a ton of time figuring out the strength and conditioning world, they can come back. They know the things that they're supposed to be that we're supposed what the shapes are supposed to look like, right?
Yeah.
And so, there's about 5 of us that will run that thing, and it kind of ends up being like, I don't know. I'm not a big motivational guy. I wish I was. We have some guys on staff that are unbelievable at motivating kids. Yeah. I'd love to be that, but I don't try to pretend to be that because I'm not good at it. Okay. It looks fake. So my deal is always like, well, you can either do this and find your way onto the field, or you can not do it. And maybe you're one of those fortunate guys that is, gifted enough.
Yeah.
But there's an end to all of that, right? At some place you're going to run into a place where it's like, oh shoot, everybody else is just as gifted as me, maybe a little bit more, but they also did this other stuff. And so I still think the bench and playing time is the greatest motivator of all. So,
that is a motivator.
It is tough, but we'll have some guys that'll be in there on Monday, guaranteed, that'll be doing half-ass work.
So do you you've seen me coach.
Yeah.
And I probably way more motivator than coach, but I like the intensity, like to be at 10.
Yeah.
When I just always wanted people to find out that they were capable of more than what they thought. And I always felt like I wanted, just from like whether I was training youth athletes to just regular old adults, I wanted them to leave, maybe not even really like me at all. Like that's okay. But they fucking knew that when they left my training session, I got every drop out of them. And they were like, oh, dang, didn't know I was capable of reaching that level. Yeah. Obviously, that takes time and rapport and trust that you have to build with players to kind of dial the intensity to there. Mm-hmm. But, man, it's a cool feeling to see people realize that they had another level in them. How do you guys get that out of your players?
Well,
do you have leaders, like specific leaders inside the team that you have them be the motivator, like a senior?
I think we have guys on staff that are really good about that. I think to some extent, the culture is there that it's just a little bit your responsibility. And there will be some guys. Yeah, there's some loud guys, there's some quiet guys. You got to figure out who can I put my thumb in. Like you always were good with me. Like you knew exactly. I don't know if you put much thought into it, but I don't. Part of the reason I'm not a great motivator guy is because I don't really feel like I need all that much. You could stand around and yell at me. I'm not listening to you.
Right.
I'm in my own world.
And it's going to be obvious to a coach, hopefully, which guys are those guys.
Yeah, but there are times when you got to go, hey, man, it's time. Now's the time to drop the hammer. If there's anything left, let's empty the tank.
Yeah.
There's no reason to leave it, but I don't know. I probably should do a better I'm not a great complimenter. Like my kids laugh. They're like, oh, Coach Potter said that didn't suck. That means we're doing good.
That's okay. You need a coach like that.
Yeah. Well, if they all like you, you're doing something wrong. Now there will be some guys that will like your style naturally. That's the way it's going to be. And there's going to be some guys that don't like your style. There's going to be some guys that don't like coaching. But again, going back to the kids, I always told my boys, I'm like, look, here's what a coach hears when you're uncoachable. I don't want to learn. And so the deal I've always told the kids, if there's one thing that you do for your whole life, and my dad taught me this, is be what he calls a life learner. Never stop learning. And if you're uncoachable, you're not learning.
Yeah.
You might be dumb. On purpose, you might, I'm not saying you're dumb, obviously, but you may be deciding to be dumb. I think those are things that are important to know. Like, I wish somebody would have told me these things when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I didn't have great coaching.
No,
I always say terrible. I did not have very good coaching. Looking back, I've seen what good coaching looks like now. I've been exposed to some amazing men who are great coaches. I didn't have anybody like that. And that was part of my motivation was I wanted to be that. I think I was a tough guy to coach.
Yeah.
I was a slow learner. I'm still a slow learner.
Sure.
I don't learn a lot of things quickly. Once I learn them, they're permanently cemented. They're become etched in my DNA. But I kind of relate to those guys that are like, they're struggling with the schematics of things. And as long as you're continuing to put in effort and you're trying, I'll be there like all the time. We're never leaving. We're going to stick with you. But as soon as you go, I don't need that, and I lose interest. We just tell our guys, like, look, if you're getting yelled at, that means somebody cares. The day that you need to be concerned of your standing is when we stop talking to you. When we stop yelling at, when we stop coaching you, because that means we've given up.
Wow. I mean, it's interesting, man. High school kids, all that jazz, things we've talked about today. I guess let me just rapid fire some questions that I have and see what you can do with this. Name your favorite influence that you get some strength and conditioning ideas from currently.
Oh, man.
Could be a couple or whatever.
So, Jim Wendler has,
5-3-1.
Yeah, and it's not really the 5-3-1 thing that was the big deal for me. It is his philosophy, and now he is a high school strength and conditioning coach.
Oh, that's badass.
And he coaches high school football at his hometown now. This little
what state's he in?
He's in Ohio.
Ohio, yeah, okay,
yeah.
Who else?
Louis Simmons, and then
R.I.P. Louis.
Yeah, and then there's some guys that are probably less known. The guys at Simply Faster.
It's called Simply Faster.
Simply Faster.
And are you guys doing any conjugate whatsoever in your high school training program? Or you personally?
You could see it. It's not directly, you wouldn't, if you know what you're looking for, you could look at it and go, yeah, there's a little
flavor of that.
Yeah, but
okay.
nobody built it that way.
What's Simply Faster? That sounds like
Simply Faster is it's like a consortium, I believe, of a bunch of different really, really good, speed guys for the most part around the country that put in, they submit they're really about measuring, timing.
Yeah.
All
quantifiable.
Yeah. Exactly. Not what's on the bar, but how fast it moved.
No, that's great.
Velocity-based training, all that type of stuff. There's a guy named Tony Holler who's hugely controversial. He was an ex-football coach. He's a track coach now, and he has a program called Feed the Cats. And his whole deal, which actually has had a lot of influence on me. We don't use their programming, but his philosophy is like, do the least amount you can possibly do to get the most amount of result that you can possibly get.
I love it.
Don't run guys into the ground. The old school days of, it's like the mental toughness aspect of it. I think that's something that you can develop as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
But training for mental toughness with young guys through physical activities, I don't know. I have not really seen that be all that effective. I think what ends up being effective is when guys get better. Like, the idea behind, well, I want my kid to be confident. I'm like, well, then make him freaking competent.
Competent breeds confidence.
If you're competent, look, I'm going to tell you, hey, you're really good at this. Well, if you don't end up becoming really good at it, and your belief in yourself is through what I've told you, and you never get a result to prove to yourself that's shallow. That's fake. That's not real.
It ain't real.
That's not real.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah. So you got to get competent and once you get a kid confident, you don't have to worry about his confidence.
Yeah.
He walks in thinking he's the best dude in the place. And I want those guys, like, not be arrogant, but I want the guy who walks in, he's like, steps up, like, I'm the best player on this field. Yeah. It doesn't have to be true.
Well, take that same train of thought, because I know we've been talking about dads and parents and stuff like that, but like, man, my audience, a lot of them are elk hunters, or they would be elk hunters, or want to be elk hunters.
How many of your audience members are young dads?
Who knows? Probably a lot.
I would think a lot.
I would say, based on stats that I never look up because I don't give a shit, probably. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is like, here's what I would lean into you, Josh, is like, okay, speak to the audience from the standpoint of, you can't lead a horse to water until you yourself know where the water is. Yeah. So obviously take care of yourself first and foremost. But more importantly than that, also that I have to ask you about wealth building And because that is what you do for your 9 to 5, which is not even really what you don't have a 9 to 5. You know that you don't have a 9 to 5. But what I'm trying to get at is that help my audience understand maybe how those weave together financially, fitness, elk hunting, all the things we talk about.
All weaves together. And like anything that's worth doing, worth mentioning, it's going to be really freaking hard. That's all there is to it. Like nobody ever talks about. I always tell the guys, I use the example all the time with our kids. I'm like, hey, how many of you guys have been in your driveway and played the game, down by 2, 5 seconds left on the clock, hit a 3 from the corner to win it, right? Everybody's done that game, made the last pass. How many of you have played that same game where you're like up by 46, 2 minutes left, hits another 3? Nobody's. So here's the deal on that. In order to be that hero guy, crap has to have gone wrong. Right?
Amen.
You have to be down. You have to be behind. Insurmountable odds that you don't get to be the hero unless the
chips are down.
Yeah, so the opportunities to be awesome don't come unless some shit's gone really wrong. That's where your chance comes from.
Yeah, dude, so for sure.
And it's all takes a long time. It's a long process. Nobody ever wins early. Like you can get ahead and you can blow it. And so any of these things that are worth really doing, getting a pile stacked to where you can finally pull the plug and retire. Not getting into New Year's resolution shape, but getting into shape where, like, this is the thing I'm struggling with now that I've made this flip into this backcountry bear psychosis that I'm in right now, right? I don't know enough dudes that I can just go, hey, I have next Tuesday to Friday. Are you ready?
You know me.
Well, I know you, but you're impossible to schedule with.
No, just let's go.
So like, they would be like, oh, I'd have to get in shape. Like, no, be in shape. Just be ready.
Stay in shape.
Just stay in shape. Just be ready.
Stay ready.
Be ready to. Life is so much easier when everyday tasks are easy to complete. And so all that stuff. But I would just say, like, for the young dads out there, like, see your kids, girls, boys. It was easier for me with the boys than it was although my daughter's 24 years old, she's still calling me, asking me training questions. Dad,
seriously?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Dad,
Hannah.
my low back hurts when I RDL. What am I doing wrong? Like, I don't know. I need to see it, and those are so much fun. Those are like getting the text. Both my boys are gone playing college football now, and getting a video text of them hitting a PR on something with all their teammates screaming around them in the gym. And I'm like, man, all that stuff, I don't think any of that stuff would have happened. Those opportunities. And I guess my point in my text to you was like, look, what if I wouldn't have done it? What if nobody would have, I got lucky. I stumbled into this. I didn't get lucky. God's taking care of me.
Amen to that.
But I didn't do it on purpose. And when we got midway through it, I started to connect the dots, and I'm like, oh, geez, Louise, this is something that dads should be doing with their boys. Who cares if they want to be athletes? Who cares if you want to ever do a backcountry hunt? Who cares about spend like that time that you get to spend with your kids doing something that they're likely going to do. Like, my boys are going to be done playing football at some point.
Yeah. It's finite.
It's got an expiration date. There's an expiration date on all these things. There's no expiration date on training. They call me to ask me things, but they also, part of the thing that's really awesome is they'll be like, hey, Dad, so, they saw the whiteboard in the backdrop of a photograph the other day, and Keel comes home, he's come home from spring break. He's like, ooh, interesting programming selection. What are we after here? I'm like, and so we'd have that discussion, they want to know how am I doing,
Yeah.
And now they're at the point where they've received some top level instruction. And so I'll call White. I'm like, hey man, what y'all doing? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go back to see him play this fall. And
where's he playing at in California?
No, he's He's at University of Central Oklahoma now.
Oh.
So I'm going to get to spend time with his strength coach when I go back there, and I'm going to see how those guys do their thing. But
I love your thirst and hunger for knowledge, Josh. You have always been that about, like, you've always been about just seeking, fact finding. But the icing on the cake to the text you sent to me was that your kids are out of the house. They flew the nest and they came back, and you were thinking, man, I think this was a good thing, training with them. And I think I was the glue. And then they came back and told you unsolicited, hey, Dad, like, really cool that you did this. This really helped, you know. And I remember distinctly not listening to a word my dad said when I was 16 and wanting to fight him. And then I do remember being a young adult and going back to my dad and, like, literally getting advice on everything in life from him, running all my decisions through my dad. And I think that's cool that you get to that maturation level where you can go back and talk to your dad and your kids are literally giving you that feedback. Like, hey, that stuff you were doing for us really has paid off.
Yeah.
Like, in more ways than one.
Well, it's the one thing we never, like, we didn't argue about a lot of stuff, but one of the things we never, and I've had parents ask me this, I'm like, oh, my kid's not working as hard as he needs to do work and blah, 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 you know, and without sounding like a total a-hole and being judgmental, I'm looking at them and I'm like, well, yeah, why would they, what are you doing? Like, why, you have the most influence, like, as a coach, we always think, well, we get them for like 2 hours a day. Parents, you get them
all times,
all the time, right? And
they're watching you, everything you do.
And it's not to say, like, look, I hate this whole thing. It's like, if you don't do it, what you're saying is irrelevant. That's bullcrap. I think when you get older, you can decide, you can cipher through that. You could tell me something about what I do for a living that was actually great advice. And I'm not going to look at you and go like, well, what does he know? He doesn't do it for a living. I'm like, no, that's good advice. It doesn't matter. Right. My profession is full of people who give great advice who do not take their own.
Sure.
That doesn't mean the advice is bad. But when you're, that's a mature, older person's perspective and a way to figure that out. Kids, monkey see, monkey do. They see you do. They're gonna know. Like, if you're telling them to do one thing, if you're saying, hey, if you want more playing time, you need to get your butt in the gym while drinking beers and eating chips, being 70 pounds overweight, like that message is going through one ear and out the other. When you're doing it and you say, hey, look, I'm not even trying to be as awesome as you are. I'm just trying to survive. This is what's required for me just to survive and be functional. It's going to take a lot more for you if you've got aspirations. If you're already doing that stuff, it lands. But I don't even think that's the important. I mean, that is important. I think the opportunity to deepen your relationship with your kids through an activity that is going to serve you and them for the rest of their lives, and you don't know where it's going to take you. I didn't know it was going to land me in a situation, you know, where I was going to be able to coach at a place that is the most amazing, I think the most amazing place in the world, connected to some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life, doing God's work for young men. And people complain about young people. Dude, young people are awesome. Grown-ups screw it up. And when you get your kids exposed to awesome grown-ups, stuff seems to work itself out. So you just don't know where that's going to take you. And maybe it doesn't, maybe you don't have any aspiration of your kids being a college athlete. That stuff doesn't matter. That's not the point at all. The point is, it's such a cool thing, and it intertwines you even deeper, and you're never going to regret it. You'll never, like, if my kids had not taken any of my advice, I'm almost 50 years old right now. I can do doggone near anything I want to do physically. If they hadn't done any of it, it would still be awesome. There's no lose. It's a no-lose trade. It's a guaranteed winning trade.
That is why we brought my good friend Josh Potter to the pod today. And if you want to see the workout we did today, head over to ELKSHAPE Training YouTube. check out the workout we did over here, and we're just doing a little programming. But you guys can see why I surround myself with people like Josh. Josh and I have stayed in touch, partly due to him staying in touch with me throughout the years, and just a really good friend. Josh, you are a special guy to me. Always have been. I really
say the same thing.
Value your friendship, and I really respect your heart and how you give back. And my favorite thing you said the entire time was literally just a second ago, that the kids are actually awesome today, because they do get clowned on.
Dude.
We all say they're soft, and they all have their phones, and they look down at all. But you just told me they're awesome. I'm going to take your word for it.
The future's bright. The future is bright. The next generation coming up, they're going to be, some of them are turds, okay?
Sure.
A bunch of them are savages.
That's cool.
A bunch of, okay. This is, say one more
This
thing.
is your parting. This, I always give it. This is your soapbox at the end. Take it away. Josh Potter.
In addition to training with your kids, any and every opportunity you get to expose them to other examples of men like yourself, like part of what made it work for my little tribe was that I recognized pretty early through some exposure to some amazing men that I got exposed to that it's really important. Like, you can't do this on your own. This isn't a job just for you. You know, you're the captain. It is ultimately your responsibility, but you're going to need some help. You need some assistance. And getting my kids exposed to people that I thought were worthy of imprinting on their character was what I always tried to do. So, like, you had a huge role in that. I mean, the boys still talk about you. Keel said, I hope you kill Dan today in the gym. I'm like, there is no chance I'm killing Dan. I've never killed Dan. It's never going to happen. But get your kids. Yeah. So if you've got buddies, if you've got other people in your community that you think are like you, that are doing the right things or even different, get your kids exposed to those people as well.
Guys, this is my friend Josh Potter. Separations in the preparation. We'll catch you on the next one.